A widowed man tries to move on with his daughter after tragically losing his wife. But everything changes when, as they pass a group of homeless people, the little girl points and shouts, "Look, Daddy, Mommy's alive." This stranger, with no clear memories, awakens in the man a restlessness that is impossible to ignore. What seemed like delirium turns into a devastating and revealing reunion. Who was that woman? How could she be identical to his dead wife? If this story interested you, subscribe to our channel, don't forget to like this video, and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The Boston winter bit harder than usual that February morning. Or perhaps it was just Ethan Mitchell who felt the cold more acutely these days. As he stood in his kitchen, mechanically pouring cereal into a small pink bowl, he caught himself staring at the empty chair across the table. Sarah's chair. 8 months had passed since her diagnosis. 6 since she'd slipped away. Yet the phantom of her presence still filled every corner of their brownstone in Beacon Hill. "Daddy, you're spilling it." Ethan blinked, looking down to find cereal overflowing onto the counter. His 8-year-old daughter Lily watched him with those eyes, Sarah's eyes, a deep brown that seemed to hold wisdom beyond her years. He managed to smile, though it felt foreign on his face. "Sorry, Pumpkin, Daddy's a little distracted this morning," Lily shrugged, taking the bowl from him. "It's okay. You're distracted a lot now." The simple observation cut through him like a knife. Children saw everything, even the things you tried to hide, especially those things. Ethan checked his watch. They were running late again. The hospital administrative board wouldn't wait, even for a widowed single father who was barely keeping it together. "We need to hurry, Lilypad. Mrs. Carson will think we've forgotten about her." 20 minutes later, they were in his Volvo, navigating Boston's narrow streets. Ethan had dropped Lily at school and was heading toward Massachusetts General Hospital, where he worked as Director of Community Health Programs. The position had once been his passion, connecting healthcare resources to vulnerable populations across the city. Now it was just something he did while trying not to fall apart. His phone buzzed. Dr. Patterson needed to reschedule their meeting about the new outreach initiative. Ethan sighed, tapping his steering wheel as he waited at a red light on Tremont Street. When he looked up, his eyes fell on a small group of homeless people huddled near the entrance to Boston Common, seeking shelter from the cold. One figure caught his attention, a woman with her back to him, her dirty blonde hair visible beneath a tattered blue beanie. Something about the slope of her shoulders, the way she held herself even in such dire circumstances. The light turned green. Ethan shook his head and drove on. The resemblance he thought he saw was just his grief playing tricks on him. It happened constantly, seeing Sarah in strangers, hearing her laugh in crowded rooms, feeling her presence in empty ones. The day crawled by in a series of meetings and emails, problems that seemed both overwhelming and insignificant. By 3:00, Ethan was exhausted but pushed himself to finish reviewing the quarterly budget before picking up Lily from her after-school program. "How was your day, sweetheart?" he asked as she climbed into the car, her backpack nearly as big as she was. "We learned about butterflies," Lily said, buckling her seatbelt. "Did you know they remember being caterpillars even after they change?" "Is that right?" Ethan smiled, genuinely this time. "Miss Jenkins says it's scientifically proven," Lily said with the seriousness only children can muster when repeating something they've just learned. "I drew a picture of Mom as a butterfly. Want to see?" Ethan's throat tightened. "Of course I do." As Lily dug through her backpack, Ethan's phone rang. The hospital again. He let it go to voicemail. These moments with Lily were precious and fleeting. Work could wait. They were nearly home when Lily suddenly pressed her face against the window. "Daddy, Daddy, stop the car!" Ethan braked, alarmed. "What's wrong?" "It's Mommy. Look." Lily pointed frantically toward Franklin Square, where a small group of homeless people were gathered around a makeshift community outreach table. "Honey, we've talked about this. Mommy's not..." "But it is her. Look." To placate her, Ethan glanced toward the park. His heart stopped. There, accepting a cup of something hot from a volunteer, was a woman who could have been Sarah's reflection. The same heart-shaped face, the same delicate nose, the same way of tucking hair behind her ear. But this woman was gaunt, her clothes dirty and mismatched, her movements hesitant and fearful. "It's not possible," he whispered. "It's Mommy," Lily insisted, already unbuckling her seatbelt. "Lily, wait." But his daughter was already out, of the car, running across the street toward the woman. Ethan cursed, quickly pulling over and following. His mind raced with explanations. A doppelganger, a cruel coincidence, his grief manifesting in the most torturous way possible. By the time he reached them, Lily was standing in front of the woman, looking up at her with wonder. The woman stared back. Confusion evident in her face, Sarah's face, but with something else behind the eyes, something fractured. "I'm sorry," Ethan said, placing his hands on Lily's shoulders. "My daughter. She thought..." The woman's gaze shifted to him, and Ethan felt the world tilt. The resemblance was beyond uncanny. It was exact. Same eyes, same lips, same small scar near the left eyebrow from a childhood fall. But where Sarah's eyes had been clear and confident, this woman's were wary, clouded. "Do I know you?" she asked, her voice hoarse but with the same cadence as Sarah's. "No," Ethan managed. "I don't think so." "You look like my mommy," Lily said, unaware of the impossibility of what she was suggesting. "Your face is the same." The woman touched her own cheek, as if confirming it was still there. "I'm sorry, little girl. I'm not your mommy." "What's your name?" Ethan asked, unable to stop himself. She hesitated, eyes darting around as if searching for escape routes. "Emma," she finally said, "just Emma." "I'm Ethan Mitchell. This is my daughter, Lily." Emma nodded but didn't offer more. Her attention was pulled away by another homeless man calling to her, and she seemed relieved for the interruption. "We should go," she mumbled, already turning away. "Wait," Ethan said, reaching for her arm but stopping short of touching her. Do you need help? A place to stay, maybe? It's going to be below freezing tonight." Emma's eyes narrowed with suspicion. Why would you offer that to a stranger? It was a fair question, one Ethan couldn't answer honestly without sounding insane. "Because you look exactly like my dead wife" was not a normal reason to invite someone home. "My daddy helps people," Lily answered for him. "It's his job." Emma studied them both for a long moment. The outreach volunteers were packing up their table. Other homeless people were dispersing, heading to shelters or whatever corners of the city they called home. "I don't take charity," Emma finally said, her voice firm despite her circumstances. "It's not charity," Ethan heard himself say. "It's human decency. Just a warm place for the night. We have a guest room. No strings attached." Emma looked at Lily, who was still staring at her with that mix of hope and confusion that broke Ethan's heart. Then she looked back at Ethan, and something flickered across her face. Recognition, perhaps, though that was impossible. "Just for tonight," she said finally, "and I leave in the morning." As they walked back to the car, Ethan felt as if he were moving through a dream. Lily chattered excitedly, asking Emma questions that the woman answered with single words or not at all. Ethan kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, searching for differences, for proof that she wasn't Sarah. But every angle, every expression only confirmed the impossible similarity. What was he doing, bringing a stranger into their home? A homeless woman who might have mental health issues, addiction problems, or worse. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't chance. That somehow, for reasons he couldn't yet understand, Emma had appeared in their lives precisely when they needed her most. Or perhaps when she needed them. As they pulled into their driveway, the last light of day fading behind the Boston skyline, Ethan made a decision. He would help this woman, not because she looked like Sarah, but because helping was what Sarah would have wanted him to do. And maybe, just maybe, in helping Emma find herself, he might find his way back to living again. Emma stood in the guest bathroom of the Mitchell home, staring at her reflection in a mirror that seemed too clean, too perfect to be showing someone like her. She barely recognized herself with the grime washed away. Her blonde hair hung in damp tendrils around her face, a face that had clearly startled the man and his daughter. The little girl, Lily, had called her Mommy. The thought made Emma's stomach twist with an emotion she couldn't name. She had no children, at least none that she remembered. Her past was a jigsaw puzzle with most of the pieces missing, just fragments that surfaced occasionally, usually in nightmares. A soft knock at the door broke her reverie. "Emma? I've left some clean clothes on the bed," Ethan's voice came through the door. They should fit you." He'd almost said they were his wife's clothes. Emma didn't need him to finish the sentence to know. The resemblance between her and whoever these people had lost was clearly strong enough to make the child believe she was her mother. The thought was both disturbing and oddly comforting, to be recognized, even mistakenly, after years of invisibility. On the streets felt strangely like coming home. "Thank you," she called back, her voice still raspy from disuse. When she emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a borrowed robe, she found neatly folded clothes on the bed, jeans, a soft grey sweater, socks, and even new underwear with tags still attached. Emma dressed quickly, surprised by how well everything fit. The sweater smelled faintly of lavender and something else, a scent that triggered a flash of memory gone before she could grasp it. Downstairs, she found Ethan in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove while Lily set the table. The domesticity of the scene made Emma want to flee. She didn't belong here in this warm house with its family photos and children's artwork on the refrigerator, yet something kept her rooted to the spot, watching. "You look nice," Lily said, noticing her first. "Doesn't she look nice, Daddy?" Ethan turned, and Emma saw the shock register on his face again before he composed himself. "Yes, she does. Dinner's almost ready. Just pasta with marinara. Nothing fancy." "I should go," Emma said, even as her stomach growled at the smell of food. "It's 20 degrees outside and dropping," Ethan replied, his tone gentle but firm. "Please at least stay for dinner." Emma hesitated, then nodded once. She could eat and leave. That was the plan. Take what was offered, then disappear back into the city where she belonged. Dinner was a strange affair. Lily chattered constantly, telling Emma about her school, her friends, her butterfly project. Emma found herself nodding, occasionally answering simple questions. Ethan was quieter, watching her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable, yet didn't feel threatening. "How long have you been in Boston?" he asked during a lull in Lily's monologue. Emma pushed pasta around her plate. "I'm not sure, 2 years, maybe 3. "And before that?" She shrugged. "New York, I think. Philadelphia before that." The cities blurred together in her memory, marked only by different streets, different shelters, different faces that never became familiar. "You don't know for sure?" Lily asked, her forehead wrinkling in confusion. "Lily," Ethan said gently, "sometimes grown-ups have trouble remembering things." "Because of her head bump?" Lily asked with the directness of a child. Emma's hand automatically went to the scar hidden beneath her hairline. "What did you say?" "You have a bump here." Lily touched her own head in the same spot. "Mommy had one too, from when she fell off a horse when she was little." Emma felt a chill run through her. "I don't remember how I got this." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Emma could feel Ethan staring at her, questions forming behind his eyes that she couldn't answer, even if he asked them aloud. After dinner, Ethan sent Lily upstairs to get ready for bed. As Emma helped clear the dishes, a muscle memory she didn't question, Ethan finally spoke the words that had hung between them all evening. "You look exactly like my late wife, Sarah." Emma set down the plate she was holding. "I gathered that. It's not just a resemblance, it's..." He ran a hand through his hair. "It's uncanny. The scar, your mannerisms, even the way you fold your napkin. Lily thinks you're her." "I'm not," Emma said firmly. "I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm not whoever you think I am." "I know that," Ethan said quickly. "Logically, I know that. Sarah passed away 6 months ago. Cancer, it was aggressive and sudden." The word cancer sent another jolt through Emma, a flash of white hospital walls, the beeping of machines. She gripped the edge of the counter to steady herself. "Are you okay?" Ethan moved toward her, concerned. "Fine," she managed. "Just tired." He nodded, though his eyes showed he didn't believe her. "I know this is strange, but would you consider staying a few days? Just until the cold snap passes. The guest room is yours if you want it." Emma should have said no. The smart thing, the safe thing, would be to leave now and never look back. But the thought of returning to the streets, to the cold and hunger and constant fear, made her hesitate. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Ethan considered the question. "Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe because Lily connected with you instantly. Maybe because I work in community health and helping people is what I do. Or maybe because I look like her," Emma finished for him. "That's part of it," he admitted. "But not the way you think. When I saw you today, it was like the universe was giving us a sign. Not to replace Sarah, no one could ever do that, but to help someone who needs it. Someone who, for whatever reason, crossed our path at exactly the right moment." His sincerity was disarming. Emma had learned to distrust kindness. It usually came with conditions, with expectations she couldn't or wouldn't meet. But something about Ethan Mitchell felt different, safe somehow. "3 days," she said finally, "just until the weather improves." That night, lying in the soft bed in the guest room, Emma stared at the ceiling and tried to make sense of the day's events. The comfortable room was so far removed from the cardboard mattresses and shelter cots she was used to that sleep seemed impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw flashes of unfamiliar images: a horse, a red bicycle, a woman with gray hair smiling. Around midnight, she heard small footsteps in the hallway, then her door creaked open. Lily stood there in unicorn pajamas, clutching a stuffed rabbit. "I had a bad dream," the little girl whispered. "Can I come in?" Before Emma could answer, Lily had climbed onto the bed and snuggled against her as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Emma froze, unsure what to do with this small, trusting person who smelled of strawberry shampoo and childhood. "You're not really my mom, are you?" Lily asked sleepily. "No, sweetheart, I'm not," Emma replied, the endearment slipping out unplanned. "But you look just like her pictures," Lily yawned. "Daddy keeps them in a box under his bed because it makes him too sad to see them. He thinks I don't know, but I do." Emma felt something crack open inside her chest. "I'm sorry about your mom." "It's okay. She's a butterfly now," Lily mumbled, her eyes drifting closed. "But sometimes I still miss her reading me stories." Without thinking, Emma began to stroke the child's hair. "Once upon a time," she found herself saying, "there was a little girl who loved butterflies." The story came from nowhere, flowing out of her as if she'd told it 100 times before. By the time she finished, Lily was fast asleep, her small hand clutching Emma's borrowed sweater. In the doorway, unnoticed by either of them, Ethan stood watching, a strange mixture of emotions on his face. He'd come to check on Lily after finding her bed empty, only to discover this scene that was both heartbreaking and healing. The woman who looked like his wife, comforting his daughter with a story that Sarah had invented. A story Emma couldn't possibly know. As he quietly retreated to his room, Ethan made a decision. Tomorrow he would begin searching for answers, because either Emma was the most extraordinary coincidence he'd ever encountered, or there was something more to her presence in their lives, something neither of them understood yet. Meanwhile, Emma finally drifted towards sleep, her dreams different tonight. Instead of the usual fragments of fear and confusion, she dreamed of butterflies emerging from chrysalises, of a little girl laughing, of a sense of belonging she couldn't remember ever feeling before. When morning came, she woke to find Lily still curled against her, and for the first time in years, Emma didn't immediately feel the need to run. The promised 3 days stretched into a week, then 2. February's bitter cold provided the excuse, but Ethan knew it was more than that. There was something almost miraculous about watching Lily bloom in Emma's presence. His daughter smiled more, talked more, seemed more like the child she'd been, before Sarah's illness had cast its long shadow over their lives. As for Emma, she remained a mystery wrapped in contradictions. Some days she was distant and wary, startling at loud noises and flinching when someone moved too quickly near her. Other days, She displayed flashes of confidence and humor that reminded Ethan so painfully of Sarah that he had to leave the room to compose himself. On this particular morning, Ethan sat in his office at Massachusetts General, staring at his computer screen but seeing nothing. He'd cancelled his meetings, claiming a family emergency. In a way, it was true. The DNA test kit he'd ordered had arrived yesterday, and he couldn't focus on anything else. A knock at his door broke his reverie. Busy brooding? Claire Thompson leaned against the doorframe, her red hair perfectly styled as always. As the hospital's PR director, Claire's appearance was as polished as her press releases. "Just thinking," Ethan replied, forcing a smile. Claire had been his colleague for years, and before Sarah they'd had a brief, intense connection that never quite became a relationship. Since becoming a widower, he'd noticed her renewed interest, though he'd done nothing to encourage it. "About your mysterious house guest?" Claire stepped into the office, closing the door behind her. "The nurses are talking. Apparently she came with you to Lily's checkup yesterday." Ethan sighed. Hospital gossip traveled faster than any disease. "Emma's staying with us temporarily. She needed a place to get back on her feet." "Emma," Claire repeated, testing the name. "No last name?" "Not that she's shared." Claire's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "And you're letting a homeless woman with no last name live with your 8-year-old daughter? That doesn't sound like the cautious Ethan Mitchell I know." There was genuine concern in her voice, which made her criticism harder to dismiss. Claire had been one of the few colleagues who'd truly supported him through Sarah's illness, bringing meals and even watching Lily during some of the worst hospital stays. "It's complicated," Ethan said finally. "Uncomplicated for me." Claire perched on the edge of his desk. "Because people are talking, Ethan, and as someone who cares about you, I'm worried." For a moment, Ethan considered telling her the truth about Emma's uncanny resemblance to Sarah, about the scar, about the butterfly story she couldn't possibly have known. But something held him back. Claire had never fully understood his relationship with Sarah. There had always been an undercurrent of resentment, though Claire had tried to hide it. "She needed help, and I was in a position to offer it," he said instead. "That's all there is to it." Claire studied him for a long moment. "If you say so. Just be careful, okay? Not everyone deserves your kindness." She stood to leave, then paused. "The board meeting about the new outreach center is tomorrow. Will you be there, or should I make excuses for you again?" "I'll be there," Ethan promised, though in truth he'd forgotten about the meeting entirely. After Claire left, Ethan pulled out his phone and opened the photo gallery. He'd been avoiding looking at pictures of Sarah, but now he scrolled to one taken about a year before her diagnosis, Sarah at Lily's 7th birthday party, laughing as she helped their daughter blow out candles. He compared it to the surreptitious photo he'd taken of Emma yesterday while she sat reading to Lily on the living room couch. The resemblance went beyond uncanny. It was as if Sarah had somehow stepped out of the past, but with eyes that held shadows instead of light. When Ethan arrived home that evening, he found Emma and Lily in the kitchen making dinner. The domesticity of the scene stopped him in his tracks. "We're making Sarah's spaghetti," Lily announced proudly. "Emma knows how." Emma looked up, a hint of alarm in her eyes. "I just followed Lily's instructions. She said her mom always added cinnamon to the sauce." "She did," Ethan confirmed, setting down his briefcase. Sarah's signature spaghetti sauce had indeed contained a pinch of cinnamon, a secret ingredient her grandmother had taught her, one she'd never written down in any recipe. "I need to talk to you later," he said to Emma, keeping his voice casual, for Lily's benefit. "About some paperwork for the community health program." Emma nodded, understanding passing between them. She knew he wanted answers as much as she did. After dinner and after Lily was tucked in bed, they sat at the kitchen table, the DNA test kit between them. Emma stared at it, her face unreadable. "You think I'm related to her somehow," she said. Finally, it wasn't a question. "I think it's a possibility we should explore," Ethan replied carefully. "The physical resemblance is extraordinary, and there are other things, mannerisms, habits, things you couldn't know but somehow do. Like the cinnamon in the spaghetti sauce." like the butterfly story you told Lily that first night. It was Sarah's story. She made it up for Lily when she was 4. Emma's hands trembled slightly. I don't remember where I heard it. It just came out. Will you take the test? Ethan asked gently. Emma stared at the kit for a long moment. What happens if it shows a match? What if I am related to your wife somehow? Then we have more answers than we do now. And if I'm not? Ethan met her gaze. Then you're still welcome here for as long as you need. This isn't conditional, Emma. After a moment's hesitation, Emma nodded. Okay. The test was simple. A cheek swab sealed in a tube, then packaged for overnight delivery. Ethan had paid extra for expedited processing, though the results would still take at least a week. After sending off the sample, Ethan found himself drawn to the attic, to boxes he hadn't opened since Sarah's passing. Among them was a container of old family documents, birth certificates, marriage licenses, photo albums. He'd been avoiding this particular box, but now he pulled it down and began methodically going through its contents. Sarah had been adopted as an infant, something she'd never hidden but rarely discussed. Her adoptive parents had loved her deeply, but they had passed away before Ethan met her, leaving Sarah with few connections to her past. She'd never expressed much interest in finding her birth family, saying her adoptive parents were all the family she needed. Now Ethan wondered if that had been the whole truth. Deep in the box, he found a folder labeled Adoption Records. Inside were the few documents Sarah had kept, her amended birth certificate, some legal paperwork, and a sealed envelope he'd never seen before. It was addressed to Sarah in handwriting he didn't recognize, with "To be opened only if you wish to know" written across the front. Ethan's hands shook as he held the envelope. Opening it felt like a violation of Sarah's privacy, yet not opening it might mean denying Emma and Lily answers they deserved. After a long internal debate, he carefully broke the seal. Inside was a letter dated 15 years ago and a faded photograph. "Dearest Sarah," the letter began, "if you are reading this, it means you have questions about your origins that I can no longer avoid answering. I have respected your wish not to discuss your adoption all these years, but there is one truth I feel you should know, should you ever wish to search for your birth family." Ethan's heart pounded as he read the rest of the letter from Sarah's adoptive mother. The photograph slipped from the pages onto his lap, a hospital image of 2 newborn babies, identical in every way. Twins. Sarah had been a twin. According to the letter, the birth mother had been very young and unable to care for 2 babies. She had made the heartbreaking decision to place one for adoption, Sarah, while keeping the other child. Sarah's adoptive mother had learned this information years later, but had respected Sarah's disinterest in her birth family by keeping it to herself, only writing this letter in case Sarah ever changed her mind. Ethan sat back, his mind racing. Could Emma possibly be Sarah's twin sister? The timing worked. Both would be in their mid-30s now. The physical resemblance was exact. And it would explain the shared mannerisms, perhaps even the fragments of memories that seemed to surface in Emma without context. But if that were true, how had Emma ended up homeless, with no memory of her past? What had happened to separate her not only from Sarah, but from their birth mother as well? As Ethan carefully refolded the letter, he heard a sound behind him. Emma stood in the attic doorway, watching him with unreadable eyes. "I remember stairs like these," she said softly. "Wooden, with a window at the top that made patterns on the floor when the sun hit it just right." She gestured to the attic's small round window through which moonlight now streamed. "Emma," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion, "I think I've found something you need to see." The DNA results arrived faster than expected, 5 days after submission, delivered to Ethan's email with a simple notification. "Your results are ready." He stared at his phone screen, suddenly hesitant to open the message that might change everything. Emma had withdrawn since their discovery in the attic. The photograph of twin babies and the letter from Sarah's adoptive mother had shaken her deeply. She'd spent hours staring at the image, running her fingers over the faces of the infants, as if trying to absorb some truth through her fingertips. "I don't remember having a sister," she'd said, her voice hollow. "I don't remember anything before. Philadelphia." Now, as Ethan sat in his office with the DNA results waiting to be viewed, he wondered if they were making a mistake. What if the truth was more painful than the not knowing? But they'd come too far to turn back. He opened the email, clicked the link, and entered the password. The screen loaded, displaying a simple message: DNA match, 99.9% probability of identical twin relationship. Ethan exhaled slowly. It was true. Emma was Sarah's identical twin sister. The statistical probability of such a perfect doppelganger being a stranger was virtually zero, but seeing the scientific confirmation still took his breath away. The office door opened and Claire walked in without knocking. "The board is asking about those budget projections for the..." She stopped, noticing his expression. "What's wrong?" Ethan quickly closed the browser tab. "Nothing, just some personal matters." Claire tilted her head, unconvinced. "You've been distracted for weeks, Ethan, ever since you took in that woman." "Her name is Emma," he corrected automatically. "Emma," Claire repeated with a tightness around her mouth, "who still hasn't left from what I hear. She's helping with Lily. It's been good for both of them. And for you." Claire's voice softened slightly. "Ethan, I'm concerned. This isn't like you bringing a stranger into your home, growing so attached so quickly, especially someone with her background." "Her background? What do you know about her background?" Ethan asked, suddenly alert. Claire hesitated. "Just what anyone can see. She was homeless, possibly mentally ill. She's none of your concern." Ethan interrupted more sharply than he'd intended. Claire stiffened. "As your friend and colleague, I'd say your well-being is absolutely my concern, especially when your decisions are affecting your work." She gestured to the stack of unsigned documents on his desk. "The Outreach Center proposal needs to be submitted by Friday, and you haven't even reviewed the final draft." Guilt flooded through him. She was right about his work suffering. The mysterious appearance of Emma in their lives had consumed his attention, and the hospital administrative duties that had once been his focus now seemed distant and unimportant. "I'll have it done," he promised. Claire's expression softened. "Let me help you, Ethan, with the proposal, with Lily, with whatever you need. Like I tried to after Sarah." She trailed off, then reached across the desk to touch his hand. "You don't have to do everything alone." The gesture was kind, familiar. Claire had indeed been there for him during some of his darkest moments after Sarah's passing, yet something in her tone made him uneasy, a possessiveness that hadn't been there before, or perhaps he simply hadn't noticed it. "Thank you," he said gently, withdrawing his hand. "But we're managing." Claire's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Of course, just remember who your real friends are, Ethan." She walked to the door, then paused. "By the way, there's a journalist calling about your community health program. Rebecca. Daniels from the Boston Chronicle. I told her you were unavailable, but she seems persistent." After Claire left, Ethan picked up his phone to call Emma, then hesitated. This wasn't news to deliver over the phone. He needed to see her face when he told her the truth about who she was. He left work early, stopping at a small bakery to buy cupcakes for Lily. A celebration of sorts, though he wasn't sure how to explain to an 8-year-old that the woman living with them was her mother's identical twin. When he arrived home, however, the house was empty. A note on the kitchen counter in Emma's careful handwriting explained that she had taken Lily to the children's library for story time. The domesticity of it made Ethan smile despite his anxiety about the DNA results. He used the time alone to gather his thoughts and prepare how to tell Emma the news. As he waited, he resumed his search through Sarah's old documents, looking for any additional clues about her birth family. There had to be more information somewhere, a name, an address, something that could help them understand how Emma had ended up on the streets with no memory of her past. In a file of Sarah's personal papers, he found an envelope containing a property deed, a small house in western Massachusetts that had belonged to Sarah's adoptive grandmother. Sarah had inherited it years ago, but had never wanted to visit or sell it, saying it held too many difficult memories. Ethan had forgotten about the property entirely. As he studied the deed, something stirred in his memory. Sarah had mentioned once, offhandedly, that her grandmother had been the keeper of family secrets. If anyone knew where I came from, she'd said it would have been Grandma Rose. The sound of the front door opening broke his concentration. Lily's excited voice echoed through the house, followed by Emma's quieter tones. "Daddy, Emma helped me find butterfly books." Lily bounced into the study, her arms full of colorful library books, and she knew exactly where to look, just like Mommy always did. Emma followed more slowly, meeting Ethan's eyes with a question in her own. "The librarian remembered Sarah," she said softly. "She thought I was her at first." Ethan nodded. "That's going to happen a lot, I'm afraid." He turned to Lily. "Sweetheart, why don't you take your books upstairs for a bit? I need to talk to Emma about some grown-up things." Lily pouted but complied, especially when she spotted the bakery box on the counter. "Can I have a cupcake after?" "One after dinner," Ethan promised. When Lily was upstairs, Ethan gestured for Emma to sit. The DNA results came back. Emma tensed visibly. "And?" "It's a match. You and Sarah were identical twins." Emma exhaled slowly, her eyes closing for a moment. When she opened them, they glistened with unshed tears. "So, I wasn't imagining things. The fragments of memory, the familiarity of certain places. They're real," Ethan confirmed. "You and Sarah were separated as infants. According to a letter from her adoptive mother, your birth mother kept one baby, presumably you, and gave Sarah up for adoption. But that doesn't explain how I ended up—" Emma gestured vaguely, unable to put into words the circumstances in which Ethan had found her. "No, it doesn't," he agreed. "But I think I might know where we can find more answers." Sarah inherited a house from her adoptive grandmother. She never wanted to visit it, but she kept all the family documents there. If there's any information about your birth mother, it might be in that house. "You want to go there?" Emma's voice held equal parts hope and fear. "I think we should. It's about a 3-hour drive to the Berkshires. We could go this weekend, make it a day trip with Lily." Emma looked down at her hands, which had begun to tremble slightly. "What if I don't like what we find? What if knowing is worse than not knowing?" Ethan reached across the table and covered her hands with his. "Then we'll face it together. You're not alone anymore, Emma." The simple statement hit her like a physical force. Not alone. After years of surviving on the streets, of trusting no one, of being invisible to the world, she suddenly had a connection to Sarah, to Lily, and now somehow to Ethan himself. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's go find my past." That night, after Lily was asleep, Emma sat on the edge of her bed in the guest room, staring at the photograph of the twin babies. Sarah and herself as newborns, before life had taken them in such drastically different directions. One to a loving adoptive family, education, marriage, motherhood. The other to what? The gaps in her memory stretched before her like a dark abyss. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Ethan entered, carrying a small box. "I found something else," he said, sitting beside her on the bed. "Sarah kept a journal through most of her life. I couldn't bring myself to read them after she was gone, but I thought you might want to." Emma took the box with trembling hands. Inside were several leather-bound journals, each dated meticulously on the spine. "She started writing when she was 12, Ethan explained. "She said it helped her process her feelings about being adopted. Maybe her words can help fill in some of the blanks for you." Emma touched one of the journals reverently. "Thank you for this." Ethan nodded, then hesitated before speaking again. "There's something else you should know. My colleague at the hospital, Claire, she seems unusually interested in you. I'm not sure why, but it makes me uneasy. If she approaches you, be careful what you say." "You don't trust her?" Emma asked, surprised. "I'm not sure," Ethan admitted. "She was very supportive after Sarah's passing, but lately," he shook his head. "Just be cautious, that's all." After Ethan left, Emma opened the earliest journal, dated 23 years earlier. Sarah's adolescent handwriting filled the pages detailing the ordinary dramas of middle school, alongside deeper reflections on identity and belonging. "Sometimes I dream about her," one entry read. "My birth mother. I imagine she had a good reason for giving me away. Dad says she was probably very young and couldn't take care of a baby. But in my dream she's looking for me, and I'm looking for her, and we keep missing each other by seconds. I wake up feeling like I've lost something I never had." Emma felt tears sliding down her cheeks as she read her twins' words. Sarah had wondered about her birth family, despite what she'd told Ethan, and somewhere in those musings might be clues to Emma's own forgotten past. She read late into the night, absorbing Sarah's life through her written words. And as dawn approached, Emma finally allowed herself to hope that the trip to the grandmother's house might be the key to unlocking not just Sarah's history, but her own as well. The house in the Berkshires stood like a sentinel against time, its Victorian architecture a stark contrast to the modern world that had grown around it. As Ethan pulled the car into the gravel driveway, Emma felt a strange sense of déjà vu wash over her. The wraparound porch with its peeling white paint, the stained glass window above the front door, the ancient oak tree dominating the side yard, all of it seemed hauntingly familiar. "Have I been here before?" she whispered, more to herself than to Ethan. He glanced at her as he turned off the engine. "Sarah only came here once after we were married. She said it gave her nightmares." In the back seat, Lily unbuckled her seatbelt, eager to explore. "It looks like a fairy tale house. Can I go inside?" "In a minute, sweetheart," Ethan said, reaching for the keys he'd found in Sarah's documents. "Let me make sure everything's okay first." The air inside was stale, thick with dust and memories. Sheets draped over furniture created ghostly silhouettes in the dim light filtering through heavy curtains. Ethan moved through the rooms, opening windows to let in fresh air, while Emma stood frozen in the entryway, overwhelmed by flashes of recognition. "The kitchen is through there," she said suddenly, pointing to a closed door. "And upstairs the third bedroom has wallpaper with roses." Ethan stared at her. "How did you know that?" Emma shook her head, confused. "I don't know. It just came to me." "Can I explore now?" Lily asked, already halfway up the creaking staircase. "Stay where we can hear you," Ethan called after her, then turned back to Emma. "Sarah's grandmother kept an office in the back of the house. If there are any documents about the adoption or birth family, they'd likely be there." The office was a small room lined with bookshelves and dominated by an antique desk. More telling, however, were the photographs covering the walls, generations of family history displayed in chronological order. Ethan and Emma moved slowly around the room, studying the images. "Here's Sarah as a teenager," Ethan said, pointing to a photo of a young girl in a graduation gown. "And these must be her adoptive parents." Emma nodded, her eyes fixed on an older photo, a stern-looking woman holding a baby. "That's Sarah's grandmother, Rose." The name came to her unbidden, like so many other fragments had since she'd entered the house. "How did you know her name?" Ethan asked quietly. "I don't know," Emma admitted. "It's like parts of my memory are waking up, but only in pieces." They began searching through the desk drawers and filing cabinets, looking for anything related to Sarah's adoption. In the bottom drawer of an old filing cabinet, beneath layers of mundane paperwork, they found a locked metal box. "The key must be here somewhere," Ethan said, glancing around. Emma walked to a small painting on the wall, a watercolor of a lighthouse on a rocky coast. Without hesitation, she lifted it, revealing a small key taped to the back of the frame. "How did you—" Ethan began. "I don't know," Emma whispered, her voice shaking. "I just knew." The key fit perfectly. Inside the box were several envelopes, birth certificates, and a worn leather journal. Emma lifted out the top envelope, addressed simply, "For Sarah when she's ready." With trembling hands, she opened it and began to read the letter inside. "My dearest granddaughter," it began. "If you're reading this, it means you've finally decided to search for your origins, something I always hoped you would do when the time was right. What I'm about to tell you, I kept secret at your parents' request, believing it was for your protection. You were not simply given up for adoption by a mother too young to care for you. The truth is far more complicated." Emma continued reading, aloud. her voice growing unsteady as the letter revealed the truth. Sarah and her twin sister had been born to a 17-year-old girl named Catherine Winters. Catherine had intended to keep both babies, but her parents, wealthy, image-conscious people, had forced her to give one up for adoption to avoid scandal. Catherine had chosen to keep Emma, the firstborn, and reluctantly allowed Sarah to be adopted by a couple the Winters family knew through church connections. 2 years later, the letter continued, Catherine disappeared with baby Emma. Her parents reported them missing, but the case went cold. The Winters family used their influence to keep the story out of the newspapers, fearing further scandal. They never told your adoptive parents about Catherine's disappearance, allowing them to believe she had simply moved on with her life. Emma's hands shook so badly that Ethan gently took the letter from her. Rose writes that she only learned the full story years later, he summarized, scanning the remaining pages. Catherine's parents eventually admitted that Catherine had been showing signs of mental illness before she vanished with Emma. They'd been pressuring her to give up the second baby as well, which may have triggered her disappearance. So my mother took me and ran, Emma whispered. But what happened after that? How did I end up on the streets with no memory? They found more clues in the leather journal. Rose had continued investigating Catherine's disappearance long after the police had abandoned the case. Her notes documented possible sightings across several states, along with newspaper clippings about a woman and child matching their description living briefly in various shelters. The most recent entry, dated just a year before Rose's passing, described a possible lead in Philadelphia, a woman resembling an aged Catherine working as a waitress in a diner, but no sign of her daughter. Philadelphia, Emma said softly. That's where my earliest clear memories begin. I was already an adult by then, already living on the streets. Daddy! Emma, come see what I found, Lily's voice called from upstairs. They followed her voice to a small bedroom with faded rose wallpaper, exactly as Emma had described. Lily stood by an old dresser, holding a dusty photo album. It has pictures of 2 babies that look the same, she said, opening the album to show them. The photographs inside documented what appeared to be secret meetings, Rose with Catherine and baby Emma in various locations. The dates spanned several years, showing Emma growing from an infant to a toddler to a young child of about 5. She kept in touch with your mother, Ethan realized. Rose was helping Catherine stay hidden. Until something went wrong, Emma said quietly, turning to the final pages of the album. The last photo showed Catherine looking thin and anxious, her eyes holding a frantic quality. That hadn't been present in earlier images. Beside her, little Emma, about 6 years old, seemed solemn and wary. Written on the back was a single line. Catherine refuses help again. Afraid E will be taken. The pieces were beginning to form a coherent, tragic picture. Catherine, suffering from untreated mental illness, had fled with Emma to protect her from the family that had already forced her to give up one daughter. Rose had secretly supported them for years, but Catherine's condition had eventually deteriorated, beyond Rose's ability to help. I think I understand now, Emma said, sitting heavily on the edge of the bed. My mother was sick. We were always running, always hiding, and at some point something happened that separated us, something traumatic enough to fracture my memories. Head trauma could explain the memory loss, Ethan suggested gently. You and Sarah both had that scar. Emma touched the mark hidden beneath her hairline, so it wasn't from a horse riding accident. Sarah's parents might have created that story to explain the scar she had when they adopted her, Ethan speculated. But for you, Emma closed her eyes, concentrating. I remember headlights, screeching tires, my mother pushing me out. Of the way. Her eyes flew open. We were hit by a car. She pushed me away at the last second, but I still hit my head on the pavement. And your mother? Ethan asked softly. Emma shook her head, tears filling her eyes. I don't know. Everything after that is a blur until Philadelphia years later. I must have been placed in foster care, or maybe I ran away. I just don't remember. Maybe we can find out, Ethan said, taking her hand. Now that we know what happened and where to look. We can search for records of the accident, foster care documents, anything that might fill in the gaps." "What does this mean, Daddy?" Lily asked, looking between them with concern. "Is Emma sad because of the pictures?" Ethan pulled his daughter into a gentle hug. "Emma just learned some important things about her past, sweetheart. Sometimes that can bring up sad feelings, but it's also good to know the truth. Like when you told me the truth about Mommy being sick." Lily asked. "Something like that," Ethan agreed, his voice thick with emotion. As they prepared to leave the house, Emma lingered in the rose wallpapered bedroom, absorbing the fragments of memory that continued to surface. This house held pieces of her past, a past connected to Sarah in ways neither of them had ever known. Sarah had avoided this place, perhaps sensing the painful truths it contained, but for Emma, it was the first solid link to her own history. "We can come back," Ethan said from the doorway. "Take more time to go through everything properly." Emma nodded, gathering the photo album and journal to take with them. "I'd like that." The drive back to Boston was quieter, each of them lost in their own thoughts. Lily eventually fell asleep. In the back seat, clutching a small china figurine of a butterfly that Rose had kept on her bedside table, a treasure Ethan had allowed her to take as a memento. "What happens now?" Emma asked softly, watching the Massachusetts countryside flow past the window. "Now we keep searching," Ethan replied, "for records of the accident, for what happened to Catherine, for anything that might help you recover your past. And if we find it all, if I finally know everything that happened to me," Ethan glanced at her, then back at the road, "then you decide what comes next, who you want to be, where you want to go." The unspoken question hung between them. Would she stay with them once she recovered her identity, or would she move on to build a life elsewhere? Neither had an answer yet, but as Boston's skyline appeared on the horizon, Emma realized that, for the first time in her memory, she wasn't afraid of the future. Whatever came next, she wouldn't face it alone. The story broke on a Tuesday morning. Hospital director's bizarre replacement. Widower takes in homeless woman who looks exactly like deceased wife. The headline screamed from the Boston Herald's website, accompanied by side-by-side photos. Sarah in a formal dress at a hospital fundraiser 2 years earlier, and Emma, captured by a long-lens camera as she walked Lily to school. The resemblance was undeniable, made even more striking by the professional manipulation of the images to heighten their similarity. Ethan's phone began ringing at 6:15 a.m. By 7, reporters had gathered outside his Beacon Hill home. By 8:00, the hospital's PR department had called an emergency meeting, which Ethan attended via video conference from his living room, unable to leave the house without facing a barrage of cameras and questions. "How did they get these photos?" he demanded, pacing the floor while Emma sat silently on the couch, her face ashen. "Who would do this?" The answer came when Claire Thompson appeared on the video call, her expression a careful mask of professional concern. "The hospital is prepared to issue a statement supporting Dr. Mitchell's privacy during this difficult time," she said smoothly. "We will neither confirm nor deny the calm situation until Ethan has had time to address it himself." The calculated pause, the subtle emphasis, Ethan knew immediately. Claire had been the source of the leak. "I need to speak with Claire privately," he told the other administrators. "We'll reconnect in 30 minutes. When the others had disconnected, leaving just the two of them on the call, Ethan's controlled facade cracked. "Why, Claire? What could possibly justify this?" Claire's professional mask slipped, revealing a flash of bitter satisfaction. "Did you really think no one would notice? That you could just replace Sarah with some homeless lookalike and everyone would pretend it's normal?" "That's not what happened," Ethan said through gritted teeth, "and you know it." "Do I?" Claire leaned closer to her camera. "I've watched you self-destruct for months, Ethan. I tried to help you. I was there for you when she wasn't." The raw jealousy in her voice confirmed what Ethan had suspected, but never fully acknowledged. Claire's support after Sarah's passing had never been simply friendship. "This isn't about helping me," he said quietly. "This is about punishment because I didn't respond to your advances." Claire flinched as if slapped. "Don't flatter yourself. This is about protecting a vulnerable child from a clearly unstable situation. That woman is not Sarah, no matter how much she looks like her. And bringing her into your home, into Lily's life, it's disturbing, Ethan. People deserve to know the truth." "The truth?" Ethan laughed bitterly. "You don't know the first thing about the truth. Emma is Sarah's identical twin sister. They were separated at birth. We have DNA confirmation." Claire's perfect composure finally cracked, surprise flickering across her face before she recovered. "That's convenient. Did she tell you that story before or after you invited her into your bed?" "That's enough." Ethan's voice was ice. "You've crossed every professional and personal boundary. Expect to hear from my lawyer." He disconnected the call and turned to Emma, who hadn't moved or spoken during the exchange. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I never thought she would go this far." Emma nodded mechanically, her eyes fixed on the muted television where her face now appeared on a morning news program. The crawl beneath the image read, "Ethical questions raised as hospital director replaces deceased wife with homeless doppelganger." "They're making it sound like I'm some kind of replacement," she whispered. "A substitute for Sarah." Before Ethan could respond, his phone rang again. This time, it was the hospital's chief of medicine. "Ethan, I'm sorry, but we need you to take a leave of absence while this situation is sorted out. The board is concerned about potential ethical implications and the impact on the hospital's reputation." The news wasn't unexpected, but it still stung. "I understand. I'll send an email delegating my responsibilities." "What about Lily?" Emma asked when he'd ended the call. "The school—" "I already called. She'll stay home today. I don't want her facing questions she's not prepared to answer." As if summoned by her name, Lily appeared at the bottom of the stairs, still in her pajamas. "Why is the TV showing pictures of Emma and Mommy? And why are there people with cameras outside?" Ethan and Emma exchanged glances, silently debating how much to tell her. Finally, Ethan knelt to his daughter's level. "Remember how we discovered that Emma is your mom's twin sister? Some people found out and they're curious about it, but they're being nosy in a way that isn't very nice. Like when Tommy Rogers took pictures of Ms. Peterson when she spilled coffee on her dress and everyone laughed," Lily asked, her young mind finding the closest equivalent in her experience. "Something like that," Ethan agreed, relieved by her simple understanding. "We're going to stay home today until things calm down." The doorbell rang, followed by insistent knocking. Ethan checked the security camera on his phone and saw a woman in her 30s with a press badge. "Dr. Mitchell?" "Rebecca Daniels from the Boston Chronicle. I'd like to offer you a chance to tell your side of the story." Ethan was about to ignore her when Emma touched his arm. "Wait. Claire mentioned a Rebecca Daniels before, said she was asking questions. About your community health program." "I remember," Ethan said, "but why would a journalist be interested in that?" "Maybe she's not," Emma suggested. "Maybe she was already investigating something else." After a moment's hesitation, Ethan opened the door just enough to speak through the gap, keeping the security chain engaged. "Ms. Daniels, what exactly is your interest in this story?" The journalist looked relieved that he'd answered. "Not the angle the Herald is pushing, I can assure you. I specialize in stories about adoption, family separation and reunion. I've been researching cases of twins separated at birth for over a year. When I contacted the hospital about your community health initiatives for homeless populations, Claire Thompson mentioned you had taken in a homeless woman. It seemed like an interesting human interest story, but I had no idea about the connection to your late wife until the Herald broke it this morning." There was a sincerity in her manner that made Ethan consider her words carefully. "And what's your angle exactly?" "The truth, whatever it is," Rebecca replied. "I'm not interested in sensationalism. I want to understand what's really happening here." Ethan glanced back at Emma, who nodded slightly. He closed the door, removed the chain, and reopened it wider. "You have 30 minutes." Rebecca Daniels proved to be as good as her word. She listened intently as they explained the extraordinary circumstances of their meeting, the DNA confirmation and their discoveries at Rose's house. She asked thoughtful questions and took meticulous notes, occasionally referencing her own research on similar cases. Twins separated at birth often report unexplainable connections, shared mannerisms, preferences, even dreams, she told them. There's growing evidence that genetic memory is more powerful than we previously believed. Can you help us find out what happened to Catherine Winters? Emma asked, and how I ended up with no memory of my past? Rebecca's expression grew serious. I can try. I have contacts in various state agencies, access to accident reports, foster care records. If there's a paper trail, I can find it. She hesitated. But I should warn you, whatever I find, I will publish. Not the sensationalist garbage the Herald is pushing, but the real story. Are you prepared for that? Emma and Ethan exchanged glances. We want the truth, Emma said firmly, whatever it is. After Rebecca left, they tried to establish some normalcy for Lily's sake. They played board games, made cookies, and kept the curtains drawn against the occasional camera flash from persistent photographers. By evening, the media presence had diminished somewhat, but the online story continued to spread, with social media users weighing in with increasingly outlandish theories and judgments. They're calling me an opportunist, Emma said, scrolling through comments on her phone, saying I'm manipulating you, using my resemblance to Sarah to... She couldn't finish the sentence. Ethan gently took the phone from her hands. Don't read that garbage. The people who matter know the truth. Do they? Emma's voice broke. Ethan, maybe I should leave, go somewhere else until this dies down. My presence is hurting you, hurting Lily. No. His response was immediate and firm. Running away won't solve anything. It would only confirm their narrative that there's something shameful happening here. He took her hands in his. Emma, you belong here. With us. We'll face this together. The certainty in his voice touched something deep within her. For a moment they simply looked at each other, a current of unspoken feeling passing between them. Then, abruptly self-conscious, Emma withdrew her hands. I should check on Lily, she murmured, retreating upstairs. Left alone, Ethan ran his hands through his hair, acknowledging what he'd been avoiding for weeks. His feelings for Emma had grown beyond compassion, beyond the connection through Sarah. He cared for her as herself, her resilience, her gentleness with Lily, her determination to face her fractured past. But was it right to feel this way? So soon after Sarah? About her identical twin, the questions tormented him, with no clear answers in sight. His phone chimed with a text message from Rebecca Daniels. Found something. Accident report from Allentown, PA, 1996. Catherine Winters and daughter Emma, age 6, struck by vehicle. Catherine DOA. Emma hospitalized with severe head trauma, then placed in emergency foster care. Sending details. Ethan's heart sank as he read the attached report. The accident had been devastating. Catherine killed instantly. Emma left with a traumatic brain injury that had affected her memory and cognitive function. The report noted that no family members had come forward to claim the child, and she had been placed in the foster system under a different last name due to confusion about her identity. Further messages from Rebecca traced Emma's path through multiple foster homes, a state institution for children with traumatic brain injuries, and eventually a group home for teenagers. At 18, she had aged out of the system with minimal support. The trail grew cold after that, with only occasional mentions in social services records from various cities. Ethan sat heavily on the couch, overwhelmed by the tragic story. Emma had lost everything, her mother, her memory, her identity, in a single moment. She had grown up institutionalized, then been cast out into the world with no family, no past, and no future. The miracle wasn't just that they had found each other now, it was that Emma had survived at all. When Emma returned, downstairs he showed her the reports in silence. She read through them with an eerie calm, as if reading about a stranger rather than herself. So that's what happened, she said finally. My mother did protect me in the end. She pushed me away from the car, took the worst of the impact herself. She looked up at Ethan with eyes that held both sorrow and peace. I've spent years wondering who I was, where I came from. Now I know. There's more, Ethan said gently, scrolling to another message from Rebecca. Catherine's parents, your grandparents, are still alive. They live in Connecticut. Rebecca found them. Emma's breath caught. The people who forced my mother to give up Sarah, who drove her to run away with me. Yes. Rebecca says they've agreed to meet with you if you want. They're in their 80s now. The weight of the decision showed in Emma's face. These people were her blood relatives, the only living connection to her mother. But they were also the architects of the separation that had defined both her life and Sarah's. I need to think about it, she said finally. This is a lot to process. As if on cue, Ethan's phone rang again, the hospital board calling for another update. The real world continued to intrude, demanding decisions and explanations. But for the moment they had what they'd been searching for, the truth about Emma's past, painful as it was. What they would do with that truth remained to be seen. The courtroom was smaller than Emma had imagined. Somehow, in her mind, the space where her future would be decided should have been grander, more imposing. Instead, it was an ordinary room with wooden benches, fluorescent lighting, and the subtle scent of furniture polish. She sat beside Ethan, her hands clasped tightly in her lap to hide their trembling. Across the aisle, Claire Thompson avoided their gaze, whispering with her attorney. The lawsuit Ethan had filed against her for defamation and invasion of privacy had culminated in this hearing, not a full trial, but a preliminary session to determine if the case had merit. All rise, the bailiff announced as the judge entered. Judge. Miranda Hoffman was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, with steel-grey hair and piercing eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they fell upon. She reviewed the documents before her with methodical precision before addressing the room. This is an unusual case, she began. Before we proceed, I want to clarify what we're determining today. This isn't about the personal choices Dr. Mitchell has made in his private life. It's about whether Ms. Thompson's actions constituted defamation and invasion of privacy. Let's keep our focus there. The proceedings moved forward with each attorney presenting their arguments. Ethan's lawyer detailed how Claire had abused her position at the hospital to access personal information, manipulated that information to create a false narrative, and deliberately leaked it to the press with malicious intent. Claire's attorney countered that she had acted out of genuine concern for a child's welfare, and that the public had a right to know about unusual circumstances that might affect a prominent community figure's judgment. Throughout it all, Emma felt like a specimen under glass. Occasionally she caught people studying her, no doubt noting her eerie resemblance to the photographs of Sarah that had been included in the evidence. She straightened her spine and met their gazes steadily. She was not a replacement. She was not an imposter. She was Emma Winters, with her own identity and her own story. The identity she'd reclaimed over the past month still felt new, like clothes that hadn't yet been broken in. After Rebecca Daniels had published her investigative piece in the Boston Chronicle, Separated at Birth, the extraordinary journey of twin sisters divided by circumstance, the public narrative had shifted dramatically. Where there had been scandal and insinuation, there was now a human interest story about family separation, trauma, and unlikely reunion. The article had detailed Catherine Winters' tragic story, the forcible separation of the twins, and the accident that had robbed Emma of her mother and her memories. It had included interviews with childhood development experts about the psychological impact of twin separation, and with neurologists about traumatic brain injury and memory loss. Most powerfully, it had featured testimony from Emma's former foster care caseworker, who remembered the confused, traumatized little girl who couldn't recall her own last name. The public response had been overwhelmingly supportive. The hospital board, initially concerned about scandal, had welcomed Ethan back from his leave of absence with apologies. Even some of the photographers who had camped outside their home had sent cards expressing regret for their intrusion. but Claire had never apologized. When confronted with the truth about Emma's identity, she had doubled down, suggesting the DNA test must have been manipulated and that Ethan was being deceived by a clever con artist. Her accusations had become increasingly desperate as evidence mounted against them, culminating in a particularly vicious interview that had prompted Ethan's lawsuit. Now, as the judge reviewed the final submissions, Emma's mind drifted to the other significant meeting of recent weeks, the one with Catherine's parents, her grandparents. Richard and Eleanor Winters had received them in their tasteful Connecticut home with visible trepidation. They were clearly wealthy, clearly uncomfortable, and clearly unprepared for the emotional impact of meeting their long-lost granddaughter. "You look so much like Catherine," Eleanor had whispered upon seeing Emma, her aristocratic composure cracking to reveal the grief beneath. The meeting had been tense, filled with decades of unspoken regrets. Richard, now frail but still proud, had attempted to justify their past actions. "We thought we were doing what was best," he'd said. "Catherine was so young, and the situation with the twins' father—" "Walter," Emma had interrupted. "His name was Walter, wasn't it? I remember my mother saying that name." The elderly couple had exchanged startled glances. "Yes," Eleanor had confirmed. "Walter Jensen, a local boy with problems. Drugs, mostly. He disappeared when Catherine told him she was pregnant." They had talked for hours, filling in the gaps of Emma's history, how Catherine had struggled with bipolar disorder that went undiagnosed until after Emma's birth, how her parents had insisted on giving up one baby for adoption, believing Catherine couldn't handle twins in her condition, how Catherine had seemed to improve, then suddenly deteriorated, becoming paranoid that they were coming to take Emma away too. "We tried to get her help," Richard had insisted, "but she saw it as a threat. That's when she ran. We searched for years," Eleanor had added, tears streaming down her face. "Hired private investigators, but Catherine knew how to disappear. She'd changed their names, moved constantly. The reunion had not been the heartwarming scene of forgiveness and reconciliation that might have capped a Hollywood movie. There was too much pain, too many years of separation, but it had provided answers, context, and a tentative connection that might with time become something meaningful." Ms. Thompson. The judge's voice pulled Emma back to the present. Judge Hoffman was addressing Claire directly now. "The evidence clearly shows that you deliberately misrepresented facts, manipulated photographs to create a false impression, and used your professional position to access and disseminate private information. Your claim of acting out of concern for the child's welfare is undermined by your own digital communications, which reveal personal animus as your primary motivation." Claire seemed to shrink in her seat as the judge continued. "This court finds that there are sufficient grounds for Dr. Mitchell's lawsuit to proceed to trial. Furthermore, I am issuing a preliminary injunction prohibiting you from making any further public statements about Dr. Mitchell, Ms. Winters, or the child involved. Violation of this injunction will result in contempt charges. Are these terms clear?" "Yes, Your Honor," Claire murmured, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Outside the courthouse, a light snow was falling, the first of the season. Ethan helped Emma with her coat, his touch lingering on her shoulders. "That went better than expected," he said. Emma nodded, watching the snowflakes melt on her gloves. "Do you think she'll actually stop now?" "I hope so. Her attorney seemed pretty clear about the consequences if she doesn't." He hesitated. "Are you ready to meet Rebecca? She should be waiting at the cafe across the street." Rebecca Daniels had become an unexpected ally and friend over the past months. Her article had not only changed public perception of their situation, but had also connected Emma with resources for people recovering from traumatic brain injuries and memory loss. Now, they were collaborating on a book about Emma's experience and the broader issues of adoption, twin separation, and identity, a project that had given Emma a sense of purpose she'd never known before. The cafe was warm and welcoming, filled with the aroma of coffee and pastries. Rebecca waved from a corner table where she sat with Lily, who was focused intently on a hot chocolate topped with whipped cream. "How did it go?" Rebecca asked as they joined her. "The judge ruled in our favor," Ethan reported. "The case will proceed to trial, though I suspect Claire's attorney will push for a settlement now." "Would you accept one?" Rebecca asked, her journalist's instinct for the story still evident. Ethan glanced at Emma before answering. "It depends on the terms. Financial compensation isn't the point. We want a public apology and assurance that she won't do this to anyone else." Lily looked up from her hot chocolate. "Is the mean lady going to say sorry for telling lies about Emma?" "Maybe," Ethan said, brushing a strand of hair from his daughter's face. "But even if she doesn't, most people know the truth now." The truth. Such a simple word for something so complex. Over the past months, Emma had learned that truth wasn't a single fixed point, but a constellation of perspectives, memories, and facts, some clear, some blurred by time and trauma. Her own truth continued to evolve as she recovered more fragments of her past and built a new present. After lunch, they returned home to find a delivery waiting, advance copies of Emma's book, co-written with Rebecca. Reflections, a twin's journey from darkness to light, was emblazoned across the cover, along with a striking image, Emma standing before a mirror, Sarah's photograph visible in the reflection. "It's really happening," Emma whispered, running her fingers over the embossed title. "You did it," Ethan said, his voice filled with pride. "You took something painful and created something meaningful from it." The book represented more than just Emma's story. It included research on adoption practices, twin studies, and the impact of family separation. The proceeds would go to a foundation they had established to support reunification efforts for separated siblings and to fund research on traumatic memory loss. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Emma and Ethan sat on the porch swing, watching the snow continue to fall. Despite the cold, there was something peaceful about being outside, wrapped in warm coats and the comfortable silence that had grown between them. "I've been thinking about what comes next," Emma said finally. Ethan turned to look at her, his expression careful. "And what have you decided?" "The book tour starts next month. Rebecca thinks it could last 6 weeks, maybe longer if the response is good. Lily and I will miss you," Ethan said softly. Emma took a deep breath. "That's just it. I was hoping maybe you both could come with me, at least for part of it." The suggestion hung between them, weighted with unspoken meaning. In the months since the DNA test had confirmed her identity, their relationship had evolved in ways neither had anticipated. The initial awkwardness, his guilt over being attracted to his late wife's twin, her fear of being seen as a replacement, had gradually given way to a deeper understanding. They had moved carefully, respectfully, building something new that honored the past without being defined by it. "I'd like that," Ethan said, his hand finding hers on the swing between them. "Lily would love the adventure." "And you?" Emma asked, finally voicing the question that had lingered unspoken for too long. "What would you love, Ethan?" He met her gaze directly. "I'd love a chance to see where this goes, not because you remind me of Sarah, but because you're you. Emma, with your strength, your kindness, your way of telling stories that makes Lily's eyes light up. The woman who built herself back from nothing, who faces every day with courage I can only imagine." Emma felt tears prick at her eyes. "I'm still finding my way. I don't know if I'll ever remember everything from before the accident." "Maybe that's okay," Ethan said gently. "Maybe who you are now, who we are together, matters more than who you were then." The snow continued to fall around them, muffling the sounds of the city, creating a private world of white. Emma leaned her head against Ethan's shoulder, allowing herself to accept the possibility of a future neither of them could have imagined a year ago. "I'd like to try," she whispered, "to see where this goes." His arm slipped around her shoulders, pulling her closer. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the snow transform the world, making it new again. Inside the house, on Emma's nightstand, sat the photograph of twin babies, Sarah and Emma, together for the first and only time before life had separated them. Beside it was a more recent image, Emma, Ethan, and Lily at the butterfly garden, their faces alight with the simple joy of being together. not a replacement family, not a substitute for what was lost, but something new and authentic, built from the broken pieces of the past into a mosaic that was beautiful in its own right. As the snow blanketed Boston in silent white, Emma closed her eyes and allowed herself to believe in second chances, not just for herself, but for all of them. The road ahead would have its challenges, its moments of doubt and grief. The past